right, moving off of compact jigs, and we're moving right into one of my favorites, swim baits, paddle tail swim baits. And once you know that something like this almost kind of started right here with this bad boy, a little tiny grub. Again, it resembles a fish. Now we've graduated that little grub up to little tiny paddle tails that use a jig head, or like the one I just showed you, the big mega bass one. You know, this is a fixed one with a magnetic device, has the hook, it's already internally weighted, and you can get all the way up into big line throughs. You know, down in Texas, this is a big deal. Down by the Dallas store, big gizzard shad down there, those fish are keen into. But up north in Minnesota and stuff, do not think that a bass won't eat this. I've caught a lot of bass on a bait like this. So we got a lot to cover. Let's get in the boat and let's break this one down. Throwing the swimmer is definitely one of my favorite ways to fish. Like I said, fish just eat fish. I live by that motto. It's a year-round bait, whether I'm throwing, you know, little tiny ones, trying to match the forage up on Mille Lacs or smallmouth, or again, matching the forage with the bigger gizzard shad and stuff down in Texas and Tennessee. A swim bait just gets bit. I can fish it in all depths, super versatile. It's basically a cast retrieve. I can kill it and drag it through the rocks. I can swim it high in the column. I can even drag it and bring it right over the top of lily pads and stuff like that, depending on how you rig it. Again, its versatility and where you throw it has no bounds. You can really throw it anywhere. Biggest key is going to be matching it up. How do you rig this thing up and how do you match it up? Let's get into that. All right, let's start with the little swimmers. This right here is a Biospawn Exo Swim, a 3.25 inch. They definitely come smaller. There's smaller swim baits out there in an array of all sizes, and we're going to definitely get into that. But when it comes to throwing this one, I use a little Outcast tackle, GoldenEye swimmer head. This is actually a head that I designed for Outcast tackle. It's perfect for fishing into the rocks. It's relatively snagless. It comes through them really good for smallmouth, and at the same time I can also fish it up in the upper water column. Being that the bait is so small, I can just expect to get bites on this. You know, whether I'm matching the forage on a place like Mille Lacs and still catching 4 and 5 pounders, or whether I'm just anywhere and I'm just looking for bites, looking to pick up bites. It's not a lot of bait. It's easy for them to handle. Most fish, big or small, are going to try to take this thing down. Because the bait's so small, that's the 1/4 ounce model, I like to use spinning tackle when I use this. So again, same as when I was talking about the nail weight, I'm using the same exact setup. That's a G Loomis NRX 7-foot 1-inch medium action spinning rod. And any line would be pretty much ideal for this. I'm using a Shimano Exyns 4000 spinning reel. Again, 2500 to 4000, perfect. 10-pound Power Pro SS V2 braided line to about a 6 to 10 pound, maybe 12 pound, depending on how bad the cover is that I'm coming through, fluorocarbon leader on top of that. And this setup right here is perfect. You know, I can feel my bites, and at the same time I got a perfect rod to target cast, and at the same time throw into open water, and it just helps me throw around such small little swimmers. Stepping up one from there, let's get into the hollow belly. This right here is just a standard hollow belly, very similar to this one here. My setup for this is a G Loomis IMX Pro 853 swim bait rod. That's a 7.2 medium heavy fast action rod. It's got a kind of a moderate build to it, and that's what I like about it. It's a little bit softer. Next up, let's talk about our mid-range paddle tails. You know, I'm saying something like that 4.8, 4 3/4, 5 inch up to maybe 6 inch, something like that in that variety. A lot of times that's going to be your hollow belly style baits, and these are good too because you can use all kinds of different kind of rig up setups for that. But when I'm throwing this is a 5/8 ounce Outcast tackle chicken jig head that we're using. This is just a little bit different of a head. It's got a line tie up front, so it's a little bit better with throwing it out on the ledges, and a bigger hook to match a bigger swim bait. That's the key. Here I'm just using a little Strike King Shadowlicious. There's so many different varieties of hollow bellies out there. Bass Tricks is one of the first one I threw. Zoom's a very good one. And as far as the actual setup that I'm using for this, we're getting back onto bait casting gear now. We're talking about heavier tackle, power fishing. I don't necessarily have to throw this out deep all the time. Generally that's what I'm doing, but at the same time I can still put a smaller jig head or even a weightless hook into the same swim bait and make it just subsurface. So, but the the actual rod and reel combo definitely going to be the same. In this case, I'm using the G Loomis IMX Pro 863 SWBR, which stands for swim bait rod. It's made for this right here. This one's actually 7.2, so it's good for target casting, good for long casting, but at the same time, it's got a little bit limber of a rod. It lets the fish load up on the actual swim bait before, because a lot of times what happens is a fish is going to attack this bait from the back like this. So I don't want to feel it push that water and come in here. What I want to get past that and feel to where the fish is eating it, and then just loads up, and I load up on that dead weight. So this rod is just perfect for that. Again, you can use anything, and I would say the 7 foot to 7.5, maybe even up to 8 foot for this, depending on what you're doing and how big of swim baits you're throwing. If you're throwing, I mean, I've seen massive paddle tails, stuff like that, you're going to step up and get into a bigger one. For the reel, I'm using a 7-speed Shimano Corrado 200 HG, which is the 7-speed. It's got a big spool on it, 7-speed gear ratio, which means I can catch up to them when they do hit it from the back like that, and I absorb that blow. I can catch up to them quick, but at the same time, I can still fish this bait because I'm not using my rod tip most of the time. I'm not using the rod to actually impart the action. I'm using the reel to reel the bait, and the bait's got itself its action. I'm using anywhere between 15 and I would say 20 pound Seeger Invisex fluorocarbon, straight fluorocarbon line through. Perfect. A lot of times 17 seems to be my absolute favorite. So that's the setup for this. Now let's start getting up into our bigger baits, our line throughs or our already pre-weighted swim bait. Like this here, this is a Mega Bass Mag Draft. This is the 6-inch model. I have the 8-inch model. They make baits like this 10, 12 inches long. This is a good tournament size one. I think it's great all around the country, and it's just an overall good seller to the public to get bid on when they're starting to make this step up into the line through or these weighted bigger swim bait and bigger paddle tail swim baits. Because of the size, you know, now I'm stepping up. This is a 7.7 heavy action rod. You know, where I had the medium heavy, I went from medium on a spinning rod to medium heavy. Now I'm up into a heavy. If this thing gets much more bigger, I got to go up into an extra heavy, maybe 7.7 up to 8 foot extra heavy. Again, something that not necessarily because I expect to catch all 10 pounders. Plenty of 2 and 3 and 4 pounders eat swim baits, but I need something that can load that big rod. So you have to match the bait to the rod. That's the most important thing. So in this case, I'm using a Shimano X Pride. It's a really good swim bait rod. Sometimes when I get to bumping up the paddle tails into any bigger than this, any heavier than this, I'll go to this rod too. A little bit bigger, more beefier rod. 7.7 X Pride heavy power. And then my reel, same exact reel though, Shimano Corrado K. It's a workhorse reel. It's my favorite. When it comes to that big spool, I can make long casts, and I'm using the HG. Again, something I can catch up to them quick after the bite, but at the same time, I can impart the right action and the right reel without it being too fast. Straight 15, 17, 20 pound. Again, that's not going to change. The similarity in these two baits is very similar, except for the fact that this has got a weighted jig head that I have to actually run through the bait, and at the same time, these are either line through, where you run the bait through the mouth and into the back or into the belly of the bait, or like this is the same type of style, but Mega Bass has already put this thing together for you. It actually has a magnet, kind of keeps that hook sitting there. Now, if your swim bait doesn't already come weighted, like either the line through does or like the Mega Bass style ones do that already have a already rigged up weighted system to it, then you need to add it, and that usually comes in the form of adding a jig head or a weighted hook. So there's a couple different ways to do this, and I'm going to show you how to do it. First of all, when it comes to the little swimmer heads like this, you know, you're just going to run it through, and you want the bait to come out on top. So just kind of run the hook down, back out, and it's made with a double keeper here and one to hold there for short strikes. And just get it nice and straight. You don't want it to be off center at all, otherwise it'll move in the water column not straight. So you definitely want to get everything lined up straight, and that'll help bring the swim bait back to you straight every single time. The next option is going to be doing a weighted hook. In this case, I'm using an Owner Beast hook. There's different ones again out on the market like this, but this is just a weighted swim bait hook. They also come in all different sizes, again, to match a smaller little swimmer like the one we were just using, like this, same concept, screw top, a weight in the midsection, and a little blade on this one on the bottom. They come in all sizes like that. And for this case, you're gonna Texas rig it, which means you're gonna hide it. It allows me to throw this into brush piles, under docks, and even through weeds without getting hung up. So with the screw top, I'm just gonna put that straight into the nose of the swim bait and just screw it on nice and straight all the way up to the line tie. Okay, so now it's hanging there, it's attached. Then I'm simply going to swing this around like this, figure out where that's going to come out, is about right here. So I'm going to flip the bait down, push it straight through to the back. Straight. Push it straight through to the back right there. Should be perfect. Like that. And then you can lift it up and just give it a little expose like that, covering the top of the hook. Now I have a hollow belly paddle tail, which will fold. You know, it's not all full. So when you're using these, I really like to use hollow bellies because I need to penetrate that fish's mouth. So I don't want a ton of plastic. And these being hollow like this makes for an easy, when they eat this thing, down it goes, and I got them. Paddle tails are a big deal right now in the fishing world and walleye fishing and everything, but that's such a vague thing, and it's trending big time, but there's so many things out there. So when would you fish these? Again, it's year round. Fish eat fish. They're always eating fish, but how your style of doing it might change. You know, if it's really cold weather, you're thinking about putting that bait down on the bottom, barely moving it through the rocks. You know, these fish aren't, you got to think natural. You want to make this swim bait become natural. If bass don't want to move, if walleyes don't want to move, well, they don't expect the bait fish to be all happy go. You know, they don't want to move either. They're going to be in that same kind of funky mood. So you want to match that. Same time, later in the summer, things are getting going. Smallies are chasing things down on the reef. They're blowing up shad. I'm throwing that swim bait in there and I'm moving it as fast as I can, throwing it out on a ledge, hopping it, or just throwing a big one, trying to attract a big one out from a lay down or an overhang tree or off the side of a dock post. So really, they're quite versatile, but at the same time, it's up to the angler to match the right swim bait to the right presentation.